Introduction, obviously, I'm the CEO of Blue Moon Zinc. The background is on this company is that I was a passive shareholder originally. I got involved 3 or 4 years ago, and the main reason I bought my position back then was the Blue Moon Zinc deposit, in my opinion, is one of the best undeveloped zinc assets in North America. The only question mark on it in my mind was that it was in California, and most people's questions on that is just how do you permit in California? So what kind of changed for me from going from a passive shareholder to becoming the CEO was earlier this year, really 2 main things. The first, the zinc price more than doubled last year, and it continues to go up. Second thing is we saw several mining projects in California successfully go through the environmental permitting process. So that showed us, hey, projects are actually happening, they're getting done. And one in particular was an open pit, heap leach, added cyanide, and it got done in 2016 and went into commercial production. So we felt if that company is able to do that, then this project, which is an underground project and a lower environmental footprint, should be able to get through the process. So we contacted the CEO of that company that got the project through permitting, and he agreed to come on board with us, and that's when I bought a 15% stake. I bought up to 15% of the company through the open market. And some of my partners, including Mr. Klingman, who was the president of Golden Queen, we own up 22% in total. And so what we did is then requisition a meeting, took over the company, and here we are today. So that all took place, culminated in taking over in around May of this year.
Who had this property before?
So I'll get into that because I'll get into the history.
Well, I looked at the history here, but who was the last party that held it?
Well, and just so I'll go through the property, how it came to be, I'll talk about permitting, and then I'll go into what our plans are. So you're right, the first slide is the history of the project. So, it was a past producer. During World War II, it produced 56,000 tons at 12%, 13% zinc. And then it was really Boliden and Imperial Metals that owned the project in the 80s and 90s. And they did a considerable amount of work. They drilled over 100,000 feet of core drilling. They did a scoping study. They did baseline environmental work and metallurgy, and it culminated in them applying for and receiving a permit to build a shaft and underground development. Zinc prices or commodity prices shifted. The Boliden ended up divesting all their North American assets and sticking to Europe. And Boliden, if you look at them today, they're still one of the largest zinc producers in Europe. Then what happened is one of the former VPs bought basically all the North American assets or rolled them all into a public company of the Boliden assets. And then they ended up in Yukon Zinc. Yukon Zinc was bought by a Chinese firm. They rolled out all the other zinc assets into another public company, and that went into Selwyn. Selwyn was main asset was bought by a Korean venture, and then the next 2 assets rolled into Savant, which is now Blue Moon. So really, Boliden North America went into Pubco, and then each asset they focused on got sold off, and they had 4 or 5 assets, and we have the 2 assets that remain. And so where our focus is going to be really on the Blue Moon, because that's a near-term opportunity. We have another zinc asset that's a great asset as well, but we believe it's better to invest the money into the near-term opportunity at present. So does that answer your question? It's kind of, it's really been in one.
Selwyn,
yeah.
Okay.
So it just you can just see as one asset got bought, it spin out the other assets and kept it going. So in terms of location, it's in California. It's in Mariposa County. Mariposa County is a population of 18,000 people. It's home to the original gold rush. So there's active mines still in the county, active exploration. What's most important in the permitting process is the county can be the lead agency, and this county will be the lead agency. They've been very clear to us that that's what they'll do. And what's important about that is it's the people in the county itself that are going to make a decision on how this moves forward and leading that process. So that's very favorable to us in our project. I should also mention that the prior operators, they spent what we believe is probably $25–30 million US in drilling it off and doing development work. And that's not exploration work, that's development work that we're gonna use. So all the files, the drill core, everything is all in our possession, we're digitizing everything. So it's money that we are gonna, you know, we're a 5 million market cap company, but we've had $30 million spent on it and we have access to all that information. Just skipping over to slide 6, this is just really showing, you know, this is what the area looks like. So people think of California and you think of, you know, there's houses everywhere and things going on. This is rolling grasslands. So there's no housing development, there's no agriculture. It's just rolling grasslands for cattle. And it's restricted under the Williamson Act. So under the Williamson Act, you can do ranching and agriculture, but no housing development. It's kind of the same as, fairly close to similar what goes on in Richmond or some of the areas in the lower valley where you can't just turn you know, agricultural land into a real estate development without strict approvals.
Is there any roads nearby?
Yeah, so you can drive right to the property.
Okay.
So I believe it's the next page. Yeah, we just turn over to the next page, page 7. There's a gravel road, but it's a highway right out to the property. It's the last couple miles is a gravel road. Hi, sure, take a seat. So yeah, you can drive there. They're great paved roads. You know, when we were there, you could see trucks going down them. In terms of you know, local communities, for a 40-minute drive to site of the Mariposa County, their municipal offices, and it's about an hour drive to Merced, which is a population of about 50,000 people. So you got access to you know, residential areas that you could house your staff or service companies, and there's also local power nearby. In terms of, you know, how far it is, how far away it is, it's about a 3.5-hour drive from the Oakland port and about a 5.5-hour drive from the LA port. And that will probably be the natural things that this concentrate will probably go overseas. So it'll be driven to one of the ports and then shipped from there.
This hydroelectric power generation, is that off a river or what?
Yeah, there's a lake nearby.
A lake?
Yeah, it's up a little further north.
Oh, so, and how's the power generated? Is there a dam there or what?
Yeah, there's a dam there.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Just on slide 8, near-term catalysts. So we recently, on October 3rd, announced an updated 43-101 resource, which I'll get into shortly. And then that was a stepping stone to do our PEA. And the preliminary economic assessment we think is important because it'll peg an economic value on the project. So we'll be able to discuss CapEx, OpEx. It'll put a net present value on the project, which we think is important for a near-term development project to have.
Are you going to have MPV?
Yeah, it'll come out. Yeah. Normally a PEA will show, you know, your net present value, your internal rate of return, what capital cost.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, it's a great industry document as well. So when you're starting to talk to people, it'd be done by independent engineers. They're on site today. We're using a firm out of Reno, well-respected firm that did the Golden Queen feasibility study.
What depth underground is this ore body?
We'll get into that here shortly, but it's
Okay.
it goes, you know, they mined it from surface when they did World War II,
Okay.
and they drilled it down to about 600 meters.
All right, fine.
It's a vertical deposit, so it'd be underground, and as a vertical deposit, it does some advantages when you're doing your underground mining. Also in 2018, we're just going to be continuing on our drilling program network, and the plan is to do a feasibility study. So just on slides 9 and 10, as I mentioned, we did a 43-101 update. The first slide is the indicated resource, roughly 4 million tons at a little over 8% zinc equivalent. So it's about 377 million pounds of zinc. There's also great credits for copper, gold, and silver, and in particular silver. On the next page is the inferred resource. You know, it's a little over 4 million tons, same, you know, roughly 8% zinc equivalent, and you're getting upwards of 400 million pounds of zinc in there as well. And the combined is, you know, around 8 million tons, around 800 million pounds of zinc, 11 million ounces of silver. Also, there's some gold and copper in there as well.
What do you estimate to be the amount of production per day? Because, you know, even with 4% zinc, depending on how many tons you're producing per day, so what are you looking at?
We're looking at, I mean, I'll flesh out of the PEA, but we're thinking it's between 1,600 and 1,800 tons per day.
Okay.
That's kind of the ballpark, the size of a mill.
Yeah.
You know, that will generate somewhere between 50 to 60 million pounds of zinc a year. So we're looking at a 12, 14-year mine life on this.
And what would you do regarding a mill? You build one, or you can buy one, or what?
Right now, I mean, the PEA will assume that we build one.
Okay.
But we will look at different options, but most likely build our own.
And you're looking at quite a few $1 million to do that.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's relatively inexpensive in the overall scheme of things of what we're looking at here. You know, we think its CapEx is going to be about 120, 125 million. With contingencies, it might be more like 150. But in terms of a project like this, on a feasibility, it's a bankable feasibility. You probably do 75% bank, and then we may do an offtake for the other 25. You know, it'd be
Nice.
try to do it non-dilutive.
Maybe Trump will invest.
Well, it's Republican country where we are.
Well, there you go.
And it's, you know, California is, you know, a blue state, but
Yeah.
you get so far on the border and it turns red.